Alright, Grandpa, what do you have for us today?
Ready to go?
Ready to go.
Well, the year was about 1941. Grandpa Hamilton and I were planning a fishing trip the next day, and his brother Ralph came by and asked where we were going fishing. Grandpa said probably Bluffs Bridge would be the only place there would be water because it was late in the season and the water was low. Alf replied, "That's good, I will go with you." He said, "I have some business to do with the Amish, but I do want to see the Granny Creek." And Grandpa said, "Now, Alf, what did you do now?" Alf's nickname was Ellick. Grandma gave him that name. And he said, "Well, I lost my bag of silver coins." Alf was a collector of silver coins, and he was a gambler. And when he drank too much, he would misplace his money. Our Granny Creek was supposed to be a witch that lived on what was called Pony Mountain. She lived alone in a little cabin about halfway up the hill. I really believe that the hill was an Indian mound rather than a mountain, but this was over the cemetery where the older Hamilton was buried. It was Uncle Barlow. He was buried in a primitive woods according to his wishes, and when we went fishing, we'd stop and visit the woods. And almost invariably, Granny Creek would come down from her mountain before we got there. We saw her only when it was dark. When the sun began to rise, she would go to her cabin, and no one would see her again till the sun went down in the late twilight. We arrived early in the morning, and this was the head of the path that led down to the fishing hole and past the cemetery. Granny Creek was leaning on a post out in front that appeared to be a hitching post left from the horse and buggy days. Now, people didn't realize that this hitching post was of Osage orange with wood that did not rot easily. It could be 100 years old and still remain a fence post. She was leaning against the fence post. Grandpa told Alf as he was driving to dim his lights or turn his lights off, or Grandma Creek wouldn't stay there. She would leave. Well, we pulled up to the place where we were going to park while we went to do our fishing, and Granny Creek spoke out and said, "Alf Hamilton, the money you're looking for is in the back of that rattle-trap Plymouth you are driving, and if you'll stick your hand back there, you'll find your bag of silver there." Alfred did so. He reached back there, and there was a goodly bag of silver there. We didn't see the silver, but the bag seemed to be pretty well filled. And Granny Creek said, "Alf, you quit drinking that rot-gut whiskey you've been drinking, you won't lose your money so often." And Uncle Al said, "Well, now I suppose I should cross the palm of your hand with silver." She said, "Alf, I will have no part of Hamilton silver. You will go free." Well, now the sun was beginning to show above the trees, and Granny Creek was getting a little bit nervous. But before she left, she looked at me and said, "Young man, you are reached your 13th birthday. You have a reading of your future coming to you, and it will come in a way that you won't suspect it." She said, "Now I must go." So she walked up the flagstone path, crossed a clear way, and went into the the cabin and she was gone. Well, we went fishing. Uncle Alf went on and did his business in town or wherever it was he went. He came back at the time he said he would be here. We were waiting for him. And we went home. Now, sometime later, I was in the woods hunting mushrooms with a companion, which always took us in Indiana to a spot on Lost Creek below a very large cemetery. Well, we would usually rest in the cemetery when we got tired because there was concrete benches around the graves where you could sit down and rest a while. As we went back to the entrance into the area, which was Boy Scout Camp Wildwood, we walked into the old part of Highland Lawn Cemetery. Now, the old part, most of the tombstones are eaten away by weather. You couldn't read them or what. And we sit down there again to rest. And the young lady that accompanied me said, what do I see coming out of the earth there? It seems like the rain has washed the earth downhill and it's open. Well, I picked up a coin and I scratched around it, and there was 2 more coins. So, or they appeared to be coins at least. They were covered with mud and corrosion. So I picked them up and studied them and didn't give them too much attention at the time. I put them in my pocket, and we walked back to, we'll say, civilization, ate a picnic lunch, and headed for home on our bicycles. Well, time went by because I had taken these coins and laid them on the windowsill on my bedroom. Well, one evening I remembered and looked at them, and I picked them up and I rubbed the corrosion off and got the mud off of them, and I looked very close, and it was a very old nickel and 2 old pennies. And about that time there was a crash of lightning and thunder that hit the backyard that made me almost jump under the bed. And every time I'd rub the coins, lightning would flash. So I wondered what was happening. I carried those coins around with me in my pocket, kind of like good luck. And I was at Wildwood one day. I was sitting alone on a log, and I took them out and I rubbed them. And what do these mean? And I looked at it, and there was a nickel and 2 pennies. A nickel and 2 pennies. A nickel and 2 pennies. Well, I couldn't make any sense out of it. I opened the Scout Manual and was studying for a merit badge, and I read where a man or a human being had only 5 passages for knowledge or anything to get to the brain. The 5 passages was the 5 senses, which were feeling, smelling, touching, seeing, and hearing. That everybody that was whole in that department got their information through these channels. So I put my hand in my pocket for I didn't know what reason, and then came the flash of lightning and the thunder. And then it dawned on me. I felt I was very, very much more intelligent than I was before. And I pondered those coins and looked at them. They seemed to be burning in my hand. And finally I figured it out. There was a nickel and 2 pennies. And I felt that I had more senses than the 5 senses. So then it dawned on me. In my hand I had received 7 senses. A nickel and 2 pennies. So I thought from then on this was Granny Creek's answer to my, shall we call it, baptism of knowledge. And that's the end.